The 9,829th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. On behalf of the members of the Security Council, I should like to pay tribute to James Earl, or Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States of America, who passed away yesterday at the age of 100. President Carter was a peacemaker who worked tirelessly and effectively in support of conflict mediation, the furtherance of human rights, and the strengthening of democracy, both while he was in office and during his many years of service thereafter. The members of the Security Council convey their deepest sympathy to President Carter's family and to the government and people of the United States. I would ask all in the chamber now to rise and join in a minute of silence in memory of President Jimmy Carter. I thank you. The provisional agenda for this meeting is threats to international peace and security. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Israel to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the following briefers to participate in this meeting. Mr. Khaled Khiari, Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific, Departments of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Peace Operations, and Dr. Michael Knights, Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Khaled Khiari.
Madam President, distinguished members of the Security Council, the Middle East is witnessing yet another dangerous escalation. The hostilities unfolding between Israel and the Houthis have taken an escalatory turn over the past weeks. The most recent round of military escalation follows a year of increasing Houthi attacks targeting Israel, as well as vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden that threaten civilians, regional stability, and freedom of maritime navigation. Madam President, since 13th of December, the Houthis have claimed at least 11 attacks targeting Israel, using ballistic missiles and uncrewed aerial vehicles. On 19th of December, Israel conducted airstrikes that targeted energy and port infrastructure in the Houthi-controlled ports of Hodeidah, Salif, and Ras Isa, as well as Sana'a. The Israel Defense Forces claimed it was hitting military targets. 9 civilians were reportedly killed, and considerable damage occurred to the Red Sea ports that has reduced their capacity. Israel also struck 2 power stations in Sanhan and Al-Wahda, districts of Sana'a, causing temporary power disruptions in Sana'a and Hodeidah. While many missiles and other projectiles fired by the Houthis from Yemen have been intercepted, on 20 December, a Houthi-fired missile warhead damaged an elementary school in Ramat Gan in central Israel. On 21st of December, another missile landed in a residential neighborhood in Jaffa, causing damage to nearby homes. 16 civilian injuries were reported in the latter incident, including a 3-year-old child. On 26 December, IDF airstrikes targeted Sana'a International Airport, the Red Sea ports on Yemen's western coast, in addition to power stations in Sana'a and Hodeidah, which the IDF said were being used for military purposes. The risk of disruption to vital humanitarian operations at a time when millions of people in Yemen are in need of life-saving assistance are of grave concern. The IDF's 26 December strikes on Yemen have reportedly resulted in at least 6 killed and dozens injured. A United Nations humanitarian air service crew member was also injured when the airport was hit. A high-level UN delegation headed by World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros was also at the airport in Sana'a when it was struck. The delegation has just concluded discussions on humanitarian situation in Yemen and the release of UN and other personnel detained by the Houthis. The United Nations continues to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all UN and other personnel arbitrarily detained by the Houthis. Madam President, I reiterate the Secretary General's grave concern about intensified escalation. I also echo his calls that international law, including humanitarian law as applicable, must be respected by all parties. We appeal to all to respect and protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. Humanitarian workers must be protected at all times. Madam President, we condemn attacks claimed by the Houthis, including on the Santa Ursula in the Arabian Sea on 27 December. The US forces targeted Houthi military facilities and weapons systems in Yemen on 16 and 21st of December, reportedly in response to Houthis' maritime attacks. There have also been unconfirmed reports of airstrikes on 27, 28, and 29 December in different parts of Yemen. We reiterate that attacks originating from Houthi-controlled area in Yemen must stop. Security Council Resolution 2722 must be fully respected in its entirety, which demands that all attacks in the Red Sea must cease. No cause or grievances can justify continuation of these attacks. Attacks in Israel and Yemen, as well as in the Red Sea, are of grave concern. Further military escalation could jeopardize regional stability with adverse political, security, economic, and humanitarian repercussions. Millions in Yemen, Israel, and throughout the region would continue to bear the brunt of escalation with no end. We must do our utmost to reverse this negative trajectory and support comprehensive efforts to end conflicts in the Middle East. We must preserve a path towards sustainable peace and stability that benefits all the peoples of the region. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Mr. Khiari for his briefing. And I now give the floor to Dr. Michael Knights.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to brief you today. I'm Dr. Michael Knights, the Jill and J. Bernstein Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. I'm a scholar of conflicts in Yemen and recently completed the first 2 books of a 3-volume history of the post-2015 Yemen war. My organisation, the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, has undertaken some of the most detailed investigative work into the threat posed by the Houthi movement, also known as Ansar Allah. Working with a range of Yemeni and international co-authors, our fieldwork and desk research have produced an interactive maritime attack tracker and 4 major studies on the Houthi movement, all of which can be viewed at the Washington Institute website. Today's emergency session on the current and future threat posed by the Houthi movement is urgently needed. The Houthis have, with strong Iranian backing and encouragement, exploited the enfeeblement of the Yemeni government since the Arab Spring of 2011, expanding through military conquests and seizing the capital Sana'a from the internationally recognised government in a September 2014 military coup. Since then, the Houthis have overrun Yemen's Red Sea ports and tried to seize the port city of Aden and the energy hub of Marib. With sustained military support from Iran, they remain postured to lunge forward at any time to snuff out the last strongholds of the internationally recognised government of Yemen. The Houthis are a clan-based military junta whose leaders have, since the 1980s, modelled their movement on Lebanese Hezbollah. Their ideology is supremacist, in favour of their own genealogical caste over all other Yemenis. And in their motto, they curse all Jewish people and openly pledge to seek the destruction of Israel and the United States of America. Madam President, the Houthis are aggressive and expansionist, presenting a multifaceted threat that I will briefly summarise today. Far from being an isolated, localised movement, they now draw military, intelligence and financial support from global partners that include Iran, Hezbollah, Iran-backed militias in Iraq, the Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab terrorist organisations, and reportedly also the Russian Federation. The first dimension of threat posed by the Houthis manifests inside Yemen itself. Their movement is documented by the UN panel of experts and other authorities and non-governmental organisations to have committed gross human rights abuses against the populations under their control, indoctrinating child soldiers, unlawfully detaining and torturing opponents, and diverting vital humanitarian assistance. They have kidnapped and still detain United Nations personnel, civil society workers, foreign seafarers, and staff of diplomatic missions. Since the 2018 Stockholm Agreement, the Houthis have consistently violated the UN arms embargo with Iranian assistance and used drone attacks to prevent the internationally recognised government of Yemen from exporting existing oil and gas production that would place desperately needed funds in the government's hands. This brings me to the second dimension of the Houthi threat, the danger that they pose to regional states in the Middle East and Africa. In 2015 to 2021, the Houthis fired over 430 missiles and more than 850 drones against Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Key components of these missile and drone systems were found by the UN panel of experts and by other authorities to have been sent to Yemen through the UN arms embargo via Iranian government smuggling networks. The Houthis continue to threaten such attacks in order to force concessions and shape the peace process to their advantage, most recently on July 7, 2024, when they publicly threatened to attack Saudi Arabia's ports, airports, and its central bank. Following Hamas's brutal terrorist attacks on Israel on October 7, 2023, the Houthis also intentionally drew Yemen into the Gaza conflict by firing around 200 missiles and 170 drones at Israel. By attacking Israel, the Houthis deliberately risked bringing retaliation onto Yemen's ports, airports, and fuel storage facilities, endangering humanitarian access to the country. The Stockholm Agreement was initially motivated by the need to protect these exact sites, and now the Houthis have squandered half a decade of diplomacy by opening a new military front against a distant enemy. The current exchange of fire between the Houthis and Israel will surely worsen in the coming weeks and months, but the Houthis can still choose to end this cycle. The final dimension of the Houthi threat is global, the anti-shipping campaign carried out against civilian and military vessels in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy's Maritime Attack Tracker recently tallied 106 confirmed Houthi strikes on shipping since November 2023. And the Houthi leadership boasts of even higher numbers. In these unprovoked attacks, the Houthis have sunk 2 civilian ships, seized and held another, the Galaxy Leader and its crew, killed at least 4 merchant seamen, worsened food security issues in Yemen and the Red Sea, inflicted higher costs and consumer prices on the global economy, robbed Egypt of more than $7 billion of canal fees, and greatly increased the risk of an unprecedented environmental disaster in the Red Sea. Use of the Suez Canal has halved since the attacks began, and at least 29 major global shipping companies now sail around the entire African continent, as they were forced to before the Suez Canal's opening in 1869. Ships and persons from 85 countries have thus far been affected. including all the permanent members of the Security Council and 4 other current Council members, Japan, Malta, South Korea and Switzerland. In other words, the Houthis have made unprovoked attacks for over a year against most of the countries on the globe. As the Houthis can deter the return of shipping by attacking just a handful of vessels each month, they may view attacks on commercial vessels as an enduring lever that they can utilise at will, to champion a cause, to gain favour from a great power, or to extort payments and political concessions from regional powers and shippers. The Houthis thus resemble a knife held against one of the world's most important trade arteries. Under these circumstances, it's easy to foresee further grave future implications for global commerce if the Houthis, 1, fail to fundamentally and permanently alter their aggressive and reckless behaviour, and 2, are left in control of the Red Sea littoral, drawing upon the support of Iran and other military suppliers. In addition to fully enforcing all UN resolutions on the Houthi movement, I therefore urge the Security Council and its members to do the following. Restate UN Security Council Resolution 2722's demand that the Houthis immediately cease all attacks on shipping. Demand that all Houthi attacks on Israel are ceased immediately. Once again, call upon Iran to halt its documented violations of the UN arms embargo. And importantly, condemn all Houthi threats of force against the internationally recognised government of Yemen and against regional states, as these military threats distort the UN-backed roadmap for peace in Yemen, tilting it in the Houthis' favour and making it less equitable and ultimately less sustainable. Expecting the Houthis to respect the Security Council is pointless, however, unless there are teeth to back up these words. To remove the means by which the Houthis undertake these attacks, the Security Council and its members should strengthen the United Nations Verification and Inspection Mechanism for Yemen, UNVIM, that is meant to enforce the arms embargo. Should prepare UN sanctions on those shippers and flag states who violate UN Security Council resolutions by bypassing inspections, or by failing to allow inspections at sea when presented with evidence of arms smuggling using their flagged vessels. The UN should call upon all member states to support the efforts of the internationally recognised government of Yemen to interdict arms smuggled via Yemen's land border with Oman and via government-held ports in Yemen. And finally, the Security Council and its members should put the Houthis on notice that continued unprovoked attacks on the world's nations will progressively have severe consequences for the Houthi ability to control territory in Yemen. To convey this warning, the Security Council should reaffirm the legitimacy of the internationally recognised government of Yemen, represented by the Presidential Leadership Council, and should underline that government's inherent right to call for international assistance to defend itself from Houthi aggression. On behalf of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, I wish to thank the Council and its members for this opportunity to brief the Security Council today.
I thank Dr. Knights for his briefing. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United States. Thank you, Assistant Secretary General Khiari and Dr. Knights, for your informative briefings. The United States condemns the Houthis' latest attacks on Israel and supports Israel's right to self-defense. The Houthis launched an intense wave of attacks against Israel in December with no regard for civilian lives. One attack reportedly injured more than a dozen people on a playground in Tel Aviv. In view of the Houthis' continued attacks, the United States reiterates our call for this Council to consider additional actions to respond to the growing threats from the Houthis and to hold Iran to account. We can all see clearly that the Houthis are fully enabled by Iran to launch long-range and deadly attacks on Israel, including civilian infrastructure, as evidenced by the Houthis' propaganda boasting about the use of advanced hypersonic missiles. Iran's provision of these and other lethal weapons to the Houthis violates the arms embargo imposed on the group by this Council. It is the responsibility of this Council to respond to Iran's flagrant violations of its resolutions and arming of terrorist groups. Every member of this Council, and especially those with direct channels to Iran, should press Iran's leaders to stop the Houthis from launching attacks that put civilians in harm's way. We reiterate our call for this Council to take steps to strengthen the UN verification and inspection mechanism. UNVIM is a key means in ensuring arms and related material are not illicitly smuggled by Iran and other malign actors to the Houthis. For its part, the United States will not hesitate to protect its own personnel, regional partners, and international shipping. On December 16th, U.S. forces conducted a precision airstrike against a key command and control facility operated by Iran-backed Houthis within Houthi-controlled territory in Sana'a. The facility was a hub for coordinating Houthi operations, including attacks against U.S. Navy warships and merchant vessels in the southern Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. And during an operation on December 21st, U.S. forces shot down multiple Houthi one-way attack uncrewed aerial vehicles and an anti-ship cruise missile over the Red Sea. These actions were consistent with international law and were an exercise of the United States' inherent right to self-defense. They do not constitute a shift in our approach to other conflicts. It is also critical that Israeli military operations, especially in densely populated areas, be coordinated and conducted in a way that do not threaten the lives of civilians or civilian infrastructure. We are thankful to WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus and his team are safe after an Israeli strike on Thursday hit part of the Sana'a airport near where they were located. Dr. Tedros traveled to Yemen on behalf of the UN for work that we all believe is critical. We support the work that the UN and humanitarian partners, including the WHO, who are delivering critical health, nutrition, water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance to the people of Yemen, are doing while facing incredibly perilous circumstances. It is past time for the Houthis to cease their reckless and destabilizing behavior, and this Council should ensure that there are consequences for their actions. Colleagues, this is an especially dangerous moment in the region. It is imperative that we all work to reduce tensions. Just under 1 year ago, we joined together in adopting Resolution 2722 that demanded the Houthis immediately cease all attacks against merchant and commercial vessels. The United States looks forward to extending the resolution's reporting request for an additional 6 months to ensure the Council has accurate and timely information. We believe this reporting should also include information about the origin of ballistic missiles and advanced drones being used in the increasingly sophisticated attacks. We thank Japan for working with us on these resolutions and will look to incoming members of this Council for their support as well. I now resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
主席，中方对美国前总统卡特逝世表示深切的哀悼。卡特前总统是中美建交的推动者和决策者，长期以来为促进中美关系发展和两国友好交流合作做出重要贡献，我们对此予以高度评价。主席，我感谢金亚丽助理秘书长的通报，也认真听取了民间社会代表的发言。2024年即将过去，在这一年里，中东地区冲突对抗不断升级，紧张局势持续蔓延。以色列在加沙的狂轰滥炸一刻未停，在约旦河西岸的暴力镇压仍未平息。黎巴嫩局势发生动荡，仍处脆弱状态。叙利亚局势发生突变，前景尚不明朗。临近年中， 也门的局势又开始急速升温。胡塞武装在红海频繁袭击商船，干扰国际航运和贸易秩序。美国、以色列等国持续空袭也门，造成重大人员伤亡。胡塞武装同以色列相互示强，相互喊话，紧张事态正在进一步升级，令人深感担忧。面对一波未平、一波又起的中东乱局，面对相互刺激、轮番升级的紧张局势，安理会有必要在新的一年里总结经验教训，加强团结协作，努力寻求共识，采取有效行动，找到中东问题综合、全面、有效的解决办法。我们呼吁中东地区各冲突当事方避免采取加剧紧张局势的行动，当务之急是停火止暴。加沙的冲突已经延宕太久，立即实现持久停火是开展一切工作的前提。黎以之间的停火十分脆弱，已经达成的协议必须得到有效执行。中方呼吁胡塞武装停止袭扰商船和其他袭击行为，呼吁以色列等有关国家停止对也门的空袭。我们呼吁中东地区各国通过对话协商解决分歧、化解矛盾，实现和平共处。各国要相互尊重主权和领土完整，相互尊重正当的生存和发展权利，相互尊重合理的安全关切。中方支持中东国家秉持共同、综合、合作、可持续的安全观，共同推动构建可持续的中东安全新架构。我们呼吁国际社会尊重中东人民的选择，支持中东国家实现战略自主。中东不是大国博弈的角斗场，也不能成为域外国家地缘争夺的受害者。有关各方应该充分尊重中东国家的历史文化传统，支持叙利亚等中东国家实现和平和解，走上符合自身国情的发展道路。在地区热点问题上，要尊重是非曲直，秉持公平正义，支持和协助地区国家找到化解矛盾冲突的办法，而不是选边站队，制造对抗。我们呼吁国际社会加大努力，推动巴勒斯坦问题早日实现全面、公正、持久解决。事实一再证明，巴勒斯坦问题是中东问题的核心。只有彻底解决巴勒斯坦问题，中东才能实现和平稳定。国际社会应以时不我待的紧迫感，重振两国方案的政治前景。主席，最后，我要祝贺美国完成本月安理会轮值主席的工作，也预祝阿尔及利亚下个月一切顺利。我也愿借此机会向即将结束非常任理事国任期的厄瓜多尔、日本、马耳他、莫桑比克、瑞士表示告别，向即将参与安理会工作的丹麦、希腊、巴基斯坦、巴拿马、索马里表示欢迎。中方期待同其他安理会成员一道，共同践行多边主义，促进团结共识，为推动安理会在2025年更好地履行联合国宪章赋予的职责做出努力。谢谢。
I thank the representative of China for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to thank Assistant Secretary General Khiari and Mr. Knight for their briefings. Slovenia condemns the latest escalation taking place in the Middle East, injecting a new wave of fear across the region. A series of Houthi attacks responded by a series of Israeli retaliations caused casualties and severe damage to civilian infrastructure. We were especially concerned over airstrikes on Red Sea ports and Sana'a airport. Such actions pose grave risk to humanitarian operations. These attacks demonstrate the level of disrespect for the international law and the international humanitarian law in recent Middle East conflicts, when no one is safe, not even the highest representatives of the UN system. The rules that were built over decades to govern order in the international community should not be dismissed with such unbearable lightness of irresponsibility. We underline that international law, including international humanitarian law, must be respected. All attacks on civilian population centers, infrastructure, and objects are prohibited. We call for respect and protection of humanitarian personnel. Let us be clear. Expressing solidarity with Palestinians in their quest for peace cannot be pursued through ballistic missiles and drones. Such actions desecrate Palestinian suffering in the occupied Palestinian territory. Equally, ensuring security to your own nation cannot be achieved at the cost of suffering of other nations' civilians, many of them already experiencing years of dire humanitarian situation. Such sense of security is fragile and short-lived. Madam President, I want to address the regional dynamics. As the region is navigating through confrontations and escalations, we continue to urge for restraint in action and in words. Every single actor must play its role in that regard, those actively involved and those supporting different players. The latter's responsibility has significantly increased given that the hands of the Security Council are being tied. We call for de-escalation and contribution to the stabilization. This is not through tit for tat, which is not in anyone's interest and does not serve anyone's security. What is in everyone's interest is a joint pursuit of peace. In this season marked by compassion and reflection, we once again underscore the imperative of an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, as well as reaching a negotiated political solution to the conflict in Yemen. Finally, as this seems to be the last regular meeting of the Security Council for this year, I would like to thank you, Madam President, and the United States for your able leadership during the month of December. I would also like to express our heartfelt gratitude to the outgoing members of the Council, Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, and Switzerland, for their effective and constructive cooperation in ensuring international peace and security. At the same time, we welcome the incoming members, Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama, and Somalia, and we look forward to working with them. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for their remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and I'd like to start by thanking ASG Khiari and Dr. Knights for their briefings today. President, the UK is deeply alarmed by the Houthis' continued missile and UAV attacks against Israel and their ongoing targeting of international shipping in the Red Sea. We strongly condemn these attacks, these reckless actions, and call on the Houthis to stop immediately. There is no justification for these attacks. Houthi aggression not only risks regional escalation, but is also making worse the already dire humanitarian and economic conditions inside Yemen. A comprehensive and inclusive political settlement remains the best route to a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Yemen. We're also clear on the role of Iran in fueling this escalation. Its long-standing financial and military support to the Houthis has enabled and exacerbated Houthi aggression. Iran bears responsibility for the actions of its proxies, and it must cease its illegal activity, which is destabilizing the region and threatening international peace and stability. President, the UK reiterates its support for Israel's right to self-defense in the face of Houthi attacks. However, Israeli action must be consistent with their obligations under international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians. We are concerned by Israeli strikes on Yemen's civilian infrastructure, including the recent attack on Sana'a airport, which injured an UNHAS crew member and endangered the Director General of the World Health Organization and his team. Let me be clear. Humanitarians must be able to carry out their important work safely and securely. Director General Tedros was in Yemen to address the ongoing unlawful detention of humanitarian, NGO, and diplomatic staff by the Houthis. We are grateful to him and his team for their efforts, and we call on the Houthis now to fulfill their commitments and immediately and unconditionally to release all the detainees. Finally, I reiterate the UK's call for de-escalation and underline our commitment to ending the conflict in the region. Further bloodshed and suffering is in no one's interests. We must break the cycle of violence and deliver long-awaited peace and security for the people of the region. And in closing, Madam President, may I thank you for your chairmanship of the Council this month and thank our outgoing elected colleagues from Ecuador, from Japan, Malta, Mozambique, and Switzerland for your contributions. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. Before delivering my statement, I also would like to highly appreciate the dedicated efforts of the 5 members, Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, and Switzerland, in maintaining international peace and security during their past 2-year term as member of the Security Council. I also thank ASG Khaled Khiari and Mr. Michael Knights for their insightful briefing and welcome the permanent representative of Israel to today's discussion. While 2024 was a disheartening year marked by heavy casualties in the Middle East, the recent developments in the region gave us a glimmer of hope that 2025 might bring change. Yet once again, we find ourselves gravely concerned as we witness the potential escalation of another conflict in Yemen. It is regrettable that the Houthis continuously exploit regional uncertainty while the Middle East stands at a critical juncture. Their attacks in the Red Sea and beyond disrupt global supply chains, impede political progress, and ultimately endanger Yemeni lives. These Houthi attacks, including direct assaults on Israel, are particularly deplorable, as they will undermine the international community's aspirations for progress in the Middle East this year and beyond. We strongly urge the Houthis to cease these illegal and reckless attacks immediately. Israeli attacks on Yemeni's key port, Sana'a airports, and power stations raise grave alarm about damage to essential lifelines, especially Hodeidah. With 19.5 million Yemenis projected to need aid in 2025, as OCHA reports. Ensuring the full functionality of Hodeidah and other critical infrastructure is vital. Moreover, it is disturbing to learn that WHO Director General and the UN staff were at the airport during the strikes. Israel had its own reasons for responding to the Houthis' direct attacks. However, such actions must align with international law including international humanitarian law, and must not hinder humanitarian assistance. If these principles are not upheld, we can imagine what the consequences would be like, as we saw in the Gaza conflict. We echo the Secretary General's call for all parties to respect international law, including international humanitarian law, and to protect the civilians and the civilian infrastructure. Now is the time for utmost restraint, as further escalation will only deepen the crisis. Madam President, the use of advanced weapon systems, such as ballistic missiles, UAVs, and so-called hypersonic missiles by the Houthis, complicate the regional situation. In this context, we urge the international community to pay greater attention to the panel of experts' final reports of this year, which highlights unprecedented support of weapons and related material to the Houthis in both nature and scale. The regional situation and compliance with the targeted arms embargo under Security Council Resolution 2216 are now more interconnected than ever. Compliance with this resolution is the bare minimum for progress of the regional situation. Thus, we reiterate our call for all UN member states, including neighboring countries, to faithfully implement all relevant Security Council resolutions, especially the targeted arms embargo. Lastly, Madam President, turning back to Yemen, as Special Envoy Hans Grunberg stated repeatedly, peace in Yemen is still achievable. To reach this goal, it is imperative for all parties, particularly the Houthis, to refrain strictly from any provocative actions, respond positively to Special Envoy and other stakeholders' efforts, and engage sincerely in dialogues to advance Yemen's political process. The international community and Security Council must remain united in backing an inclusive, Yemeni-led political transition under UN auspices to this end. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Republic of Korea, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Gracias, señora presidenta, y agradezco al subsecretario Khiari por su exposición informativa, al señor Knights por su intervención. Reconozco la presencia del representante permanente de Israel en esta reunión. El Ecuador condena con la mayor firmeza los nuevos ataques perpetrados por los hutíes en contra de Israel. Este último episodio de la campaña de agresiones constituye una evidente violación del derecho internacional y de las resoluciones del Consejo de Seguridad, incluida la resolución 2216, que exige a los hutíes abstenerse de cualquier provocación o amenaza a los estados vecinos. Los ataques se producen aproximadamente un año después de las acciones de escalada emprendidas por los hutíes en el Mar Rojo, que amenazan a la población civil, la estabilidad regional y la libertad de navegación marítima, en clara contraposición a las resoluciones 2722 y 2739. Estos ataques no tienen justificación y el Ecuador se suma a la preocupación del secretario general ante la posibilidad de que esos actos exacerben aún más la escalada regional y generen un círculo de represalias con graves consecuencias humanitarias y de seguridad. A fin de evitar una espiral de violencia, el Ecuador insta a todas las partes a ejercer prudencia y contención, a respetar el derecho internacional humanitario, a no atacar a la población civil, a respetar al personal humanitario y a proteger infraestructuras civiles. Mi delegación también se suma a la preocupación expresada por la comunidad internacional ante la ofensiva en el Aeropuerto Internacional de Saná debido al peligro al que estuvo expuesta la delegación de alto nivel de la ONU que se encontraba en el lugar, incluyendo al director de la OMS. El Ecuador insiste en la importancia de la implementación efectiva del embargo de armas en Yemen, que, como lo ha documentado el grupo de expertos, es incumplido de manera sistemática. Es una realidad que factores internos y externos han minado el optimismo que existía sobre la posibilidad de alcanzar un acuerdo de paz en Yemen, como ha expresado en los últimos meses esta delegación, y más recientemente en la sesión informativa del 11 de diciembre pasado, ante lo que reafirmo la necesidad de una voz unificada del Consejo de Seguridad que con su gestión empuje hacia una paz sostenible en Yemen y en la región. Señora Presidenta, colegas, en esta última intervención en el Consejo de Seguridad como miembro elegido por la Asamblea General para el bienio 2023-2024, expreso la tranquilidad del Ecuador por haber actuado en estricto apego al derecho internacional y cumplido su responsabilidad de acuerdo con lo establecido en la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, incluyendo su artículo 24, que establece que el Consejo actúa a nombre de sus miembros. Renuevo mi agradecimiento a todos los integrantes de este Consejo por su cooperación, que ha sido la base de un trabajo colectivo incansable. Deseo el mayor de los éxitos tanto a los miembros que permanecen en el Consejo cuanto a los que se incorporan próximamente. Vuelvo a expresar la gratitud de mi delegación con los equipos de SCAD e intérpretes, como mi delegación lo ha podido atestiguar, particularmente durante la presidencia ecuatoriana en diciembre de 2023, su labor es clave en el día a día del Consejo. También agradezco a su delegación, señora Presidenta, por la manera en la que ha conducido el Consejo de Seguridad durante este mes. Concluyo con un reconocimiento especial al trabajo abnegado y comprometido de todos los jóvenes diplomáticos que durante estos 2 años conformaron la misión permanente del Ecuador, contribuyendo a la noble causa de la paz. Muchas gracias.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank ASG Khiari and Dr. Knights for their informative briefings. I wish to make 3 points. First, Japan strongly condemns the repeated launch of missiles and drones by Houthis against Israel. We are also deeply concerned about the damage to civilian infrastructure and attacks on the civilians and the staff of international organizations, including the most recent incident on UN delegation headed by Dr. Tedros, which were caused by Israeli airstrikes. Further escalation must be averted, particularly at a time when Yemen is facing a humanitarian crisis. The Houthis claim that they are acting in solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza. However, they have to recognize that their conduct is not helping the Palestinians at all. They are only agonizing the people in the region and beyond, including Yemenis, by fueling tension in the already inflamed Middle East. Such opportunistic and irrational behavior must stop immediately. The Houthis should instead engage constructively in the peace process to end the decade-long conflict and human suffering in the country. We also urge Iran to exercise its influence over the Houthis and let them hold back. Second, we cannot turn blind eyes to the enormous amount of the Houthis' weapons. In the words of the panel of experts, there is an unprecedented scale of arms embargo violations against a rebel group. All countries, of course including the members of this Council, must strictly adhere to Security Council Resolution 2140, 2216, and other relevant resolutions. Member States should carefully monitor related transactions by both state-owned and private companies. Third, let me take this opportunity to condemn the other unlawful acts of Houthis once again, including attacks on international shipping for over a year, as well as the detention of UN and other humanitarian and human rights workers. the Houthis must immediately cease these reckless activities and unconditionally release all those arbitrarily detained, including the Galaxy leader and its crew. Madam President, since this will be most likely to be Japan's final statement as a Security Council member before its current term ends tomorrow, I wish to make a few concluding comments. First of all, let me congratulate you, Madam President, the U.S. team for successful presidency this month. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the members of the Council and the Member States for the valuable cooperation and support provided to us over the past 2 years. I also thank the Security Council Affairs Division and the Interpretation Service and other Secretariat staff members for their valuable assistance and dedication. It has been a tremendous honor for me and our team to serve in the body with a primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. The past 2 years have not been an easy period for all of us, but it was a privilege for us to work with the colleagues of the Council day and night to seek solution or at least try to prevent the deterioration of the situation. We will cherish many experiences acquired in this Council. Let me wrap up my statement by wishing the membership of the Security Council in 2025 all the best, and by pledging that Japan will continue to contribute to international peace and security, which is the cause of this Council, in whatever capacity we may have. And we look forward to working in this chamber in the near future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Japan for their remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Et je voudrais également remercier le sous-secrétaire général Khaled Khiari de son exposé et de la coopération pendant les 2 dernières années. Et nous avons également pris bonne note de l'intervention de M. Michael Knights. Madame la Présidente, l'escalade des violences dont nous avons été témoins ces derniers jours doit impérativement cesser. La cadence des attaques de drones et missiles des Houthis contre Israël a drastiquement augmenté. Et l'une ayant, nous l'avons entendu, détruit un bâtiment d'une école à Ramat Gan et une autre ayant touché une aire de jeu dans un quartier résidentiel de Jaffa. Elle a fait plusieurs blessés. Les frappes aériennes d'Israël, notamment sur l'aéroport civil de Sanaa, l'infrastructure portuaire et énergétique d'Odeida, de Salif Daïsas et de Ras Kanatip, ainsi que sur l'infrastructure pétrolière de Ras Issa, ont de leur côté fait plusieurs morts et blessés, y inclut un membre de l'équipage de l'UNAS. Et heureusement que la délégation autour du directeur général de l'OMS, qui se trouvait également à l'aéroport, s'en est sortie sain et sauf. Le droit international oblige à protéger le personnel humanitaire et onusien, comme le rappelle la résolution 2730. Toutes et tous n'ont pas eu la chance d'échapper au danger ces dernières semaines. Nos pensées vont aux victimes et à leurs familles. La Suisse condamne fermement cette spirale de violence. Les récentes déclarations d'un côté et de l'autre de la mer Rouge, qui expriment une logique guerrière et vengeresse, sont extrêmement inquiétantes. La Suisse appelle toutes les parties à respecter le droit international et à faire le choix de la retenue. Une nouvelle escalade régionale peut et doit être évitée. L'ordre international nous donne les outils nécessaires pour prévenir une aggravation de la crise et protéger les populations. Je voudrais en souligner 3 qui sont d'une importance cruciale. Premièrement, la Suisse appelle au plus strict respect du droit international. Les règles de la Charte des Nations Unies nous offrent un cadre clair. L'usage de la force doit être strictement limité à l'exercice nécessaire et proportionnel de la légitime défense. Lors d'un conflit armé, les principes clés de distinction, de proportionnalité et de précaution doivent guider toutes les actions militaires. La population et les infrastructures civiles sont protégées et ne doivent jamais être prises pour cible. Ces principes ne sont pas des abstractions, mais des obligations juridiques. Au Yémen, ils prennent un sens particulièrement concret et urgent. La situation économique, alimentaire et sanitaire dans ce pays est catastrophique. Les infrastructures portuaires, aériennes et énergétiques, déjà fragilisées par des années de conflit, sont des piliers indispensables pour la survie de millions de civils. Les attaques qui compromettent ces infrastructures mettent leur vie en danger et creusent encore davantage le gouffre humanitaire. Ces attaques mettent aussi en danger le personnel humanitaire et leurs activités d'importance vitale. Je répète que le droit international impose la protection du personnel humanitaire et onusien, y compris le personnel recruté sur le plan national et local, tel que réaffirmé par la résolution 2730. Nous appelons à la libération immédiate et sans condition du personnel humanitaire et onusien encore détenu à Sanaa. En Israël, la population civile ne doit pas faire l'objet d'attaques indiscriminées, y compris la destruction d'infrastructures civiles telles que les écoles. Deuxièmement, l'embargo sur les armes établi par la résolution 2216 doit être respecté. Il constitue un outil essentiel pour limiter la prolifération d'armements dans une région déjà déstabilisée. Les armes, qu'elles soient introduites par des voies clandestines ou par un trafic organisé, représentent un facteur aggravant du conflit. Ce Conseil, en s'appuyant sur le travail du comité de sanctions 2140, a pour responsabilité de veiller à l'application stricte de cet embargo. Ce comité doit considérer toute potentielle violation de l'embargo avec la diligence qu'il convient et soutenir au mieux sa mise en œuvre. Et troisièmement, la Suisse appelle à un retour au dialogue. Dans ce moment critique, il est crucial de faire le choix de la diplomatie. Seule la retenue, la désescalade et le retour au dialogue permettra de garantir la paix et la stabilité régionale. Que ce soit en mer Rouge, au Yémen ou au Proche-Orient, le seul chemin viable est celui d'une solution politique. La cessation des attaques au Yémen, en Israël et en Syrie, ainsi qu'un cessez-le-feu à Gaza et la libération des otages sont d'importance cruciale. Au Yémen, une solution politique inclusive, dirigée par les Yéménites sous l'égide des Nations unies, reste la meilleure solution pour mettre fin à la dynamique de violence qui déchire le pays depuis plusieurs années. La situation régionale ne doit être instrumentalisée par aucune des parties pour des gains politiques à court terme. Les parties prenantes et celles pouvant exercer une influence sur ces dernières doivent s'abstenir de toute rhétorique, action qui pourrait exacerber les tensions. Madame la Présidente, les événements de ces derniers jours nous préoccupent profondément. Ce Conseil doit contribuer de toute urgence à une solution diplomatique et parler d'une seule voix pour éviter un nouveau chapitre meurtrier à l'embrasement régional dont les populations civiles continuent à payer le prix fort. Alors que la Suisse se trouve sur le départ en tant que membre élu de ce Conseil, elle continuera à s'investir pour le respect du droit international et pour la protection des civils partout et à tout moment. Nous compterons sur les membres du Conseil de sécurité pour en faire de même. Et vu que c'est probablement notre dernière séance, je voudrais également remercier chaleureusement tous les collègues, tous les membres de ce Conseil, SCAD et sa directrice et ses équipes, les interprètes, le personnel de sécurité et bien entendu aussi ma fantastique équipe. Je remercie la délégation américaine pour la présidence de ce mois de décembre et je souhaite à tous les membres du Conseil et à ce Conseil même l'année prochaine un peu plus de paix et qu'ils puissent contribuer à préserver les générations futures du fléau de la guerre. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for their remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie M. Khiari et M. Knight pour leurs exposés. La France condamne les attaques menées par les Houthis contre Israël depuis plusieurs semaines. Elle déplore qu'en dépit des nombreux avertissements de ce Conseil, les Houthis, soutenus par l'Iran, continuent de mener des actions déstabilisatrices en ciblant des navires commerciaux en mer Rouge et dans le golfe d'Aden et en visant le territoire israélien avec des missiles et des drones. Ce faisant, ils violent le droit international, y compris les résolutions adoptées par notre Conseil. Ce faisant, ils démontrent leur volonté d'escalade qui n'est pas dans l'intérêt du peuple yéménite et des peuples de la région. Ces actions doivent cesser sans délai. La France rappelle son attachement à la stabilité régionale et à la sécurité d'Israël et la nécessité d'éviter toute nouvelle escalade. Elle souligne la nécessité de respecter les principes de distinction et de précaution et de protéger le personnel des Nations unies, les acteurs humanitaires et les civils conformément au droit international humanitaire. La frappe israélienne contre l'aéroport de Sanaa le 26 décembre, qui a blessé le copilote de l'UNAS chargé de transporter une délégation des Nations Unies, dont le directeur général de l'OMS, est préoccupante. La France réaffirme son soutien aux agences des Nations Unies qui se déploient sur les terrains de crise dans des conditions difficiles. Ce Conseil doit rester mobilisé pour mettre fin à la politique de fuite en avant des Houthis soutenus par l'Iran, à la fois au Yémen, en mer Rouge et contre Israël. Il doit s'assurer du strict respect des résolutions 2722 et 2739. Le Galaxy Leader et son équipage doivent être libérés sans délai. La France poursuivra son engagement dans le cadre de l'opération européenne Aspides, selon une approche strictement défensive et visant à la désescalade afin de rétablir la sûreté maritime et la liberté de navigation. Madame la Présidente, les attaques menées par les Houthis rappellent la nécessité de faire appliquer la résolution 2216. Seule une solution politique permettra une cessation complète des hostilités et permettra de mettre fin aux souffrances du peuple yéménite. La France redit son plein soutien à l'envoyé spécial des Nations Unies en vue de la reprise du processus de paix au Yémen. Je tiens enfin, moi aussi, à remercier l'Équateur, le Japon, Malte, le Mozambique et la Suisse pour leur contribution aux travaux de ce Conseil depuis 2 ans. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President. Malta expresses condolences on the passing of President Carter, a true peacemaker who contributed tirelessly towards international peace and security and tried to make the world a better place. Malta also thanks ASG Khiari and Mr. Knights for their briefings. Malta remains deeply concerned with the situation in the Middle East. The ongoing war in Gaza and the catastrophic humanitarian crisis it has fomented continues to generate devastating repercussions across the region. Malta firmly believes that an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire across Gaza provides the only opportunity to avert further violence and instability in the region. At this critical juncture, it remains fundamental for all parties to act with utmost restraint. De-escalation must remain the priority. Most importantly, we hope that they show flexibility in the ongoing negotiations for a ceasefire and have the political will and determination to conclude them successfully and without further delays. President, the threat of violence remains evident, as demonstrated by the ongoing Houthi attacks targeting Israel. These include the reported ballistic missile attack that hit and damaged a school in central Israel, and another which led to Israeli civilians being injured. We condemn these strikes and call on the Houthis to immediately cease all attacks in the region. The indiscriminate shelling of civilian population centers must end. Such acts are prohibited under international law, and this is binding on all actors. Furthermore, we call on the Houthis to cease their actions against merchant and commercial vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. We also reiterate our calls for the immediate and unconditional release of all UN and other personnel detained by the Houthis. These acts continue to escalate tensions and impair progress towards a political solution to the conflict in Yemen. We are equally concerned by the reports of retaliatory airstrikes by Israel in Sanaa, including Sanaa Airport, and in and around the ports of Hodeidah, Salif, and Raisa. These attacks also led to civilian casualties and caused extensive damage to civilian infrastructure. It is deeply regrettable that Yemeni civilians will suffer the repercussions of such attacks, given their reliance on humanitarian aid delivered through Hodeidah's port. Malta calls on all parties to abide by their obligations under international law and to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. We emphasize the binding nature of all Security Council resolutions and stress that all member states must strictly abide by them, including full compliance with relevant UN arms embargoes. President, in conclusion, we reiterate our call on all states in the region and those with influence over the parties to facilitate and encourage the escalation towards a peaceful solution which addresses the root causes of conflict. Restraint, de-escalation, and the pursuit of diplomatic solutions to disputes remains the only way forward if we are to break the cycle of violence and secure lasting peace in the Middle East. Finally, President, at the end of our tenure on the Council, we'd like to congratulate the US for your successful presidency this month. Allow me also to thank all Council members for their cooperation over the past 2 years. I also extend our gratitude to the Secretariat, SCAD, our interpreters, for all their work in ensuring the smooth functioning of this body. And I take this opportunity to extend best wishes to the incoming 5 new members of this exalted body. We also thank the wider UN membership for entrusting us with this responsibility. We never took this trust for granted and worked tirelessly to ensure that it is repaid in full. As we leave the Council, you can rest assured that Malta will continue to be a strong supporter of the UN and the multilateral system. We will continue to serve as a voice for peace and dialogue beyond our term. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta for their remarks, and I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to deliver the statement on behalf of the A3+ members, namely Algeria, Guyana, Mozambique, and my country, Sierra Leone. We thank Assistant Secretary General Mr. Khaled Khiari for his valuable briefing on the developing situation in the Middle East. We take note of the contribution of Mr. Michael Knight. At the outset, the A3+ would like to express grave concern about the recent Israeli airstrikes on the Sanaa International Airport, which took place at a time when a high-level UN delegation headed by the WHO Director General was at the airport. This, as reported, resulted in the deaths of 2 persons and injury to a United Nations Humanitarian Air Service crew member. We strongly echo the UN Secretary General's demand for full respect for international law, including international humanitarian law, and for all parties to respect and protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. As we approach the new year, the escalating military confrontation between the Houthis and Israel is indicative of the general intensification of conflict across the Middle East, further exacerbating the already acute humanitarian crisis across the region. The Yemeni people, who have borne the brunt of internal conflict since its inception, will surely pay the highest price of this escalating situation. Years of violence have displaced millions, deepened poverty, and led to widespread starvation. While we affirm our strong support for the efforts of the Special Envoy and regional actors, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Sultanate of Oman, in the pursuit of a peaceful resolution to the protracted conflict in Yemen, we'd like to emphasize the following key points. First, the A3+ expresses grave concern about Israel's attack on Yemeni civilians and civilian infrastructure in violation of the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Civilian targets, including airports, ports, and power stations, should never be subject to military assault. These attacks have resulted in the death and injury of countless innocent civilians, while endangering the safety of UN personnel. The targeting and destruction of civilian facilities that are crucial for humanitarian operations is a clear violation of international law and will only worsen the dire humanitarian situation in Yemen. We also note with grave concern attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructures and areas, including strikes that destroyed the school in Ramat Gan and injured civilians in Jaffa, as well as the Sanaa International Airport. Second, we also reiterate our call for the immediate and unconditional release of all detained UN and humanitarian personnel held by the Houthis. The efforts of the WHO Director General and Special Envoy must be taken seriously by the Houthis for the release of these individuals. The risk faced by a senior UN staff member and his team in an attempt to secure these releases highlights the urgency of their situation. The Houthis' violation of the human rights of the Yemeni people are now extended to international civil servants, diplomats, and humanitarian workers must stop. We call upon members of the UN Security Council and the international community to urge the Houthis to release all detained UN and humanitarian staff immediately and unconditionally. Third, the A3+ is gravely concerned about the ongoing Houthis attacks on commercial and maritime vessels, which disrupts international trade, pose serious threats to the environment and the marine ecosystem. Earlier this month, drone attacks targeting 3 commercial vessels in the Gulf of Aden highlighted the increasing risk associated with their actions. Lastly, while we note that the current conflict in Gaza have significant implications for the Yemeni people and the ongoing political process aimed at achieving sustainable political stability and regional peace, we urge all parties to utilize diplomatic avenues to achieve lasting peace in Yemen and the region. The Yemeni population cannot afford to be dragged into a regional conflict. We remain committed to supporting all diplomatic efforts of the Special Envoy in facilitating a Yemeni-led and owned political process under the auspices of the United Nations. The political strategy of the Special Envoy for Yemen is clear. Only through a united and coordinated approach can we hope to achieve peace and security for all people in Yemen and in the region. Finally, Madam President, the A3+ congratulates the United States on successful presidency of the Council this December. We further pay tribute to the outgoing elected members of the Council, Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, and the A3+ member, Mozambique, for their important contributions to the work of the Council. We look forward to welcoming and working together with the incoming elected members, Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama, and A3+ member, Somalia. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Госпожа председатель, признательный помощник генерального секретаря по Ближнему Востоку, Азии и Тихоокеанскому региону Khaled Khiari за его брифинг. Положение дел на Ближнем Востоке вызывает самые серьезные опасения. Беспрецедентные по масштабам и длительности насилия не только не прекращаются, но, к сожалению, лишь набирают обороты. И все больше стран региона оказываются втянуты в этот порочный круг. Не стал исключением и Йемен, вокруг которого на протяжении последних 10 дней разворачивается очередной виток эскалации. Важно разобраться в его первопричинах, избегая однобокой трактовки ситуации, деградацию которой наши западные коллеги возлагают в том числе сегодня исключительно на движение Ансар-Аллах. При этом анализе нельзя оставлять в стороне и более широкий контекст, поскольку множество очагов напряженности сегодня спровоцировано действиями Израиля против палестинцев, которые вызывают отторжение и осуждение на арабской улице. Госпожа председатель, запуск хуситами ракеты в сторону Израиля в ночь с 19 на 20 декабря, безусловно, заслуживает осуждения. Насколько нам известно, она была перехвачена израильской ПВО еще до пересечения границы Израиля, однако осколки повредили школу. За этим последовали еще несколько ударов. К счастью, обошлось без жертв. Понимаем, насколько подобные инциденты с запуском ракеты БПЛА по израильской территории чувствительны для Западного Иерусалима. Вновь акцентируем недопустимость любых действий, создающих угрозы гражданскому населению и объектам гражданской инфраструктуры. Сочувствуем всем пострадавшим, в том числе в результате удара по Яффе 21 декабря, и желаем им скорейшего выздоровления. Однако последовавшая за инцидентом 19 декабря реакция израильских военных с подключением сначала ВМС США, а затем и всей самопровозглашенной англосаксонской коалиции в Красном море явно является непропорциональной и также заслуживает нашего осуждения. В результате массированных ударов по столице Йемена Сане, а также портам Ходейди, Ас-Салифу и Рас-Исси погибли как минимум 9 человек. Атаки подверглись топливные баки, электростанции, морские буксиры. Был нанесен серьезный ущерб портовой инфраструктуре. Тревожит циркулирующие в СМИ, в том числе в израильских информациях, что атака ВВС «Цахал» на йеменские порты была спланирована заранее, что к моменту запуска ракеты хуситами 19 декабря израильские истребители уже находились в воздухе. Все эти обстоятельства как минимум требуют внимательного изучения. В итоге за последние дни Йемен подвергся настоящей агрессии с воздуха. В результате новых ударов Израиля при поддержке США по Сане и Йеменским портам на Красном море 24 декабря снова были целенаправленно атакованы нефтяные терминалы, электростанции, а также международный аэропорт Саны, где в это время находилась высокопоставленная делегация Всемирной организации здравоохранения во главе с гендиректором ВОЗ Тедросом Гебрейсусом. Он только чудом не пострадал, ведь по его собственным свидетельствам разрушению подверглись объекты буквально в нескольких метрах от места, где находился руководитель ВОЗ. В результате удара по зданию аэропорта погибли как минимум 2 человека. Ранен один член экипажа борта, перевозившего делегацию, которая, к слову, находилась в Сане для переговоров по гуманитарной ситуации в Йемене, а также по вопросу об освобождении задержанных сотрудников ООН. То есть Соединенные Штаты и Великобритания, лицемерно призывавшие сделать все для их освобождения, по сути подвергли риску переговорщиков от ООН, которые именно для этого в Сану и прилетели. Призываем прислушаться к заявлению Генерального секретаря ООН о том, что удар по Сане и портам на Красном море создают серьезную угрозу для гуманитарных операций, в то время, когда миллионы людей в Йемене нуждаются в этой гуманитарной помощи. Сложно охарактеризовать действия Израиля и англосаксонской коалиции иначе, как намеренную эскалацию, которая привела к жертвам среди мирного населения в Йемене. Безотносительно того, носили ли они ответный характер, масштабы разрушений несоизмеримы. Схожая логика, кстати сказать, прослеживается и в контексте военной операции Израиля в секторе Газа, где в результате действий Цахал погибли уже более 45 тысяч мирных жителей. При этом израильское военное руководство открыто заявляет, что намерено продолжать свою операцию в Йемене, нацеливаясь парализовать деятельность 3 упомянутых портов, которые остаются важнейшей артерией поставок гуманитарных грузов в эту страну и где трудится множество гуманитарных работников. Призываем все стороны, вовлеченные в агрессивные действия против Йемена, проявлять сдержанность и воздерживаться от эскалационных шагов. Также необходимо принять меры по защите простых йеменцев и гуманитарщиков. Госпожа председатель, в январе исполнится год с начала нелегитимных военных действий группы западных стран во главе с Соединенными Штатами и Великобританией против территории суверенного Йемена. Эта самопровозглашенная коалиция с циничным названием «Страж процветания» не решает проблемы, а лишь усугубляет их и приносит этой ближневосточной стране, как и ранее многим другим, новые и новые разрушения. Буквально в пятницу Соединенные Штаты и их сателлиты снова нанесли массированные удары по многострадальной йеменской земле. Призываем членов Совета Безопасности не давать ввести себя в заблуждение. Эти атаки не имеют ничего общего с осуществлением права на самооборону по статье 51 Устава ООН. Их нельзя оправдать ни международным правом, ни резолюцией Совета Безопасности 2722. Действия так называемой коалиции – грубейшее нарушение статьи 2 Устава организации. Они являются ничем иным, как очередной военной агрессией коллективного Запада против суверенного государства в длинном списке ей подобных. Она не только никак не способствует снижению градуса напряженности вокруг Йемена, включая турбулентность в Красном море, но и стимулирует дальнейшую эскалацию, а также подрывает продвижение процесса межйеменского регулирования. Йеменские проблемы надо решать исключительно дипломатическими методами. Мы давно стараемся донести эту простую мысль до наших коллег по Совету, но некоторые из них, к сожалению, по-прежнему делают вид, что не слышат наши призывы. Госпожа председатель, ситуация в Йемене сегодня имеет тенденцию к обострению, что в конечном итоге может перечеркнуть все предыдущие с таким трудом достигнутые наработки по урегулированию. Ключ к разрешению противоречий в самом Йемене и вокруг него лежит в стимулировании процесса внутреннего регулирования. В качестве первоочередных мер необходимо как можно скорее запустить реализацию соответствующей дорожной карты, почти согласованной при участии ООН и региональных государств. Твердо убеждены, что прогресс на политическом треке в этой стране повлечет за собой снижение, а затем и прекращение военной активности Ансар-Аллах. В этой связи призываем спецпосланника генерального секретаря по Йемену Ханса Грюнберга ускориться с необходимыми шагами и оформлением соответствующих договоренностей. Не видим никаких оснований для увязки йеменского регулирования с региональными процессами. Не видим также причин, по которым йеменский народ должен ждать, когда на Ближнем Востоке, на Большом Ближнем Востоке, наступит всеобщий мир, прежде чем приступить к улучшению ситуации в своей собственной стране. Безальтернативным является инклюзивный характер политпроцесса с учетом законных интересов всех ведущих политических сил этой страны и прямой диалог с вовлечением всех протагонистов, включая Ансар Аллах. Повторим, при этом для нахождения устойчивого регионального решения и во избежание рецидива вспышек насилия нельзя упускать из виду ключевой фактор стабилизации в региональном масштабе – скорейшее прекращение боевых действий в Газе, а также поиск решений для долгосрочного регулирования в Ливане и Сирии. В целом, сегодня как никогда востребованы диалоговые механизмы, способствующие оздоровлению отношений между странами региона, которые не должны при этом игнорировать базовую проблему, дестабилизирующую весь Ближний Восток, связанную с невыполнением решений Совета Безопасности Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН о создании палестинского государства. Тогда и найдут свое устойчивое решение множество конфликтных ситуаций, включая обеспечение безопасного судоходства в регионе Красного моря, за что Россия активно выступает. В заключение, госпожа председатель, хотели бы отметить вклад уходящей пятерки членов Совета Безопасности в его работу и пожелать уходящим, а также заступающим на вахту с 1 января делегациям всяческих успехов. Благодарю вас.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I shall now make a further statement in my capacity as a representative of the United States. And I just want to reiterate what I said in my earlier remarks as I reject the accusation of the representative of Russia. As I said previously, the United States will not hesitate to protect its personnel, regional partners, and international shipping. The actions taken by the United States have been consistent with international law and were in the exercise of our inherent right to self-defense. I now resume my role as President of the Council, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Khiari and Mr. Knight, for your valuable briefings. I would further like to thank the United States for their excellent presidency. Moreover, I would like to thank outgoing Security Council member Mozambique, Ecuador, Japan, Malta, and Switzerland, and welcome the new members Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama, and Somalia. Recently, my phone buzzed with a notification that shocked me to my core. The school I myself attended as a child for 8 years, a place that shaped my earliest memories in my hometown, Ramat Gan, was struck by a ballistic missile launched by the Houthis. My own school in my own hometown. Its classrooms, once filled with the laughter of children, were forever changed by their terror. In another attack, a playground in Jaffa filled with children was struck, leaving a 3-year-old critically injured. Since then, the Houthi terrorists have been launching an endless bombardment of ballistic missiles at our population centers. Answer me honestly, what would you do if it were your child, your school, your city? Because this isn't just my story, it's Israel's story, and it's a story we are living every single day. We have had enough. Once again, millions of Israelis are waking up every night to the sound of sirens wailing across the country. Yet another ballistic missile launched by the Houthis, again and again and again. For over a year, this Iranian-backed terrorist organization has unleashed almost 300 unprovoked missile and drone attacks targeting Israeli civilians and communities. 300. This is systematic, calculated terror. Look at this map. Look at the distance between Yemen and Israel. Israel does not even share a border with Yemen. 2,000 kilometers separate us, 1,500 miles. 2,000 kilometers. We have no dispute with them. Yet they send their missiles and their drones to murder our people. And why? Pure radical jihadist hatred for Jews. This is no surprise. The Houthis proudly present their banner, which contains their slogan, and I quote, you can look it at their flags. It's called, God is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, curse upon the Jews, and victory to Islam. Their violence is rooted in a burning hatred of Jewish life. Under the watch of this council, the Houthis have grown from a terrorist group into a terrorist army, all with the help of their Iranian paymasters. According to the UN's own experts, and you saw the documents, the Houthis now possess advanced ballistic missiles from Iran, including the previously unseen Khatam-2 ballistic missile, new UAVs also from Iran, increased technological expertise from Iran, and extensive training again from Iran. And what's the result? The number of Houthi terrorists has exploded to over 350,000, compared to just 30,000 in 2015. The Houthis are a crucial strand forming the web of terror that links Tehran's proxies. Iranian support for the Houthis violates Security Council Resolutions 2140 and 2722, and is an assault on all tenets of sovereignty and international law. Let's talk about money. The estimated Houthi annual budget is $1.2 billion, derived from illegal activities, bribes, stolen assets, and covert trade in the Gulf of Aden. Much of this funding also flows directly from Iran. However, Iran's support is not limited to arms and finance. Houthis receive technical assistance and training from Iran. Houthi combatants are trained in Iran, where they gain expertise in producing missiles, drones, and advanced weaponry. Training from Iranian forces, including the IRGC Quds Force, increases their ability to accurately target vessels in the Red Sea. We even have the names of the key Iranian officials involved in this terror training, and I'll give you the names. High-level Iranian advisors, such as General Rostam Qassami of the Quds Force and Major General Muhammad Ahmad al-Talibi. Both of them coordinate with Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi. Meanwhile, the UN's failure to enforce its arms embargo has directly enabled the Houthis' reign of terror. Their resilience on maritime supply lines from Iran remains unchecked. We heard about the port of Hodeidah, advanced missile systems, engines, fuel, and warheads are funneled through Houthi-held Red Sea ports. Yet the UN verification and inspection mechanism has failed in its responsibilities. We are aware of several ships which have docked at the port of Hodeidah this year without any inspection, blatantly violating Security Council resolution. This negligence sustains Iran's supply to the Houthis, fueling their terrorism. The international community's complacency has handed terror a free pass. We are now dangerously close to a situation where the Houthis completely strangling the Suez Canal, this critical route of global trade, relied upon by almost all nations, is under direct threat from a terrorist organization. The implications of such a scenario are unthinkable. President Sisi of Egypt revealed just days ago that the Egyptians' revenue from the canal has declined by 60%, which is a loss of almost $7 billion for a nation already facing economic challenges. Yet, the UN's failure to act has brought us to the brink of this disaster. It somehow gets worse. The Houthis do not spare anyone, not even the children of Yemen. In just the first half of 2024, Yemen's government documented over 3,000 cases of child recruitment into the terrorist group. Your silence has emboldened them. If you think the Houthis are only our problem, you are wrong. Security Council reports document their attacks on Middle Eastern vessels. 134 attacks on merchant ships, commercial vessels, and US and UK warships between November 2023 and July 2024. Ships are constantly under attack. I'll give you a few examples. The Sea Champion was sunk in February. 3 crew members of the True Confidence were murdered in a missile attack. To this day, 25 crew members of Galaxy Leader are still held captive. UN experts stated that such attacks using these weapons against civilian ships had not been seen since, and I quote, World War II. Since World War II. It is time the world wakes up. A terror group attacking trade routes, collaborating with global terror networks, and armed by Iran is not just a regional threat. It is a grim warning for the world order. They have been given a green light for terror. But let's truly address the elephant in the room. Iran. Distinguished council members, the Houthis are nothing more than Iran's weapon in its war against peace. Iran's fingerprints are on every missile, every drone, every attack. Military experts confirmed the Houthis could not achieve their capabilities without Iran's direct support. Their transformation into a terrorist army is Tehran's doing. Yemen's chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council has pleaded for action against Iran's funding of the Houthis. Madam President, we have come to this council not just to address the threats posed by the Houthis, but to challenge the double standards that hangs over this body. Some nations here preach the values of international law and human rights while turning a blind eye to those who violate these very principles with impunity. Madam President, we have listened to the briefers. We have all heard about what this terrorist organization is doing. Will the Council condemn the Houthis today? You know, we all heard bad things about them, but there will be a condemnation. What we are doing here today? You know, the Secretary General, he calls for both sides to de-escalate as if we are moral equals, and the Security Council cannot issue a basic condemnation against a terrorist organization. Israel will not wait for the world to act. Israel will protect its citizens, no matter how far the threat comes from. If you didn't speak up when our schools were hit, don't speak up when we respond. Don't call for de-escalation when we defend ourselves. Don't equate aggressor and victim. Don't demand restraint from a nation protecting its children. Israel has always acted with strength and resolve to protect its people, and we will not be deterred. If 2,000 kilometers is not enough to separate our children from their terror, it will not be enough to protect their terror from our strength. Our response will continue to be strong and decisive, and it will send a clear message to all who dare to harm our citizens. Israel will not hesitate, and Israel will not forgive. To the Houthis, perhaps you have not been paying attention to what has happened to the Middle East over the past year. Well, allow me to remind you what has happened to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Assad, to all those who have attempted to destroy us. Let this be your final warning. This is not a threat. It is a promise. You will share the same miserable fate. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Israel for their statement. There are no further names inscribed on the list of speakers. But before joining the meeting, as this was the last scheduled meeting of this council for the month of December, I would like to take a moment and express sincere appreciation of the delegation of the United States to the members of this council and to the Secretariat for all of the support you have given us. Indeed, as you all know, it has been a busy month, and one in which we rallied to consensus on several important issues under our purview. We couldn't have done it alone and without the hard work, support, and positive contributions of every delegation, but especially from the representatives of the Secretariat, including the technical support team, the conference service officers, our interpreters, to whom we are greatly indebted, translators, verbatim reporters, and security staff. As we end our presidency, I know I speak on behalf of the Council in wishing the delegation of Algeria good luck in the month of January. And on behalf of the Council, I would also like to express a sincere appreciation of the Council to the 5 outgoing members, namely Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, and Switzerland. I commend you all for your hard work and contributions during your terms on the Security Council. And we look forward to working with the incoming elected members next year, Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama, and Somalia. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned.